Now, to that blockbuster bidding war that everyone has been talking about. The streaming platform Netflix and its rival Paramount have been battling to take over the media giant Warner Brothers Discovery. It's been a month-long saga that analysts say is likely to reshape Hollywood. But now Netflix has in effect pulled out of the race, saying it would not raise its current takeover offer. It clears the way for Paramount to take over the company and a whole array of high-profile media assets, including HBO and also the news networks CBS and CNN. But the deal does need to be approved by regulators. Well, Business Insider's chief correspondent, Peter Kafka, has been following the story, and he joins me now on the line from New York. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Was it all down to money in the end? I mean, Netflix couldn't top Paramount's offer, or they could have theoretically, but they didn't want to.
Well, I think there's two elements, and we're doing some educated guessing here, and we'll get a little clearer, I think, over the next day or so. But one is money, not so much that Netflix couldn't spend more money. Their shareholders did not like this deal. Netflix shares have been declining ever since this deal sort of came into view late last fall. Netflix investors have been saying, we don't like this deal. We prefer you not to spend $72 billion on this asset. When the deal looked like Paramount might win it earlier this week, Netflix shares started to rise. When Netflix bailed out yesterday, the stock went up 10%. I think the other element you have to think about is Netflix considering that maybe they couldn't get this deal approved in 2026 when Donald Trump controls the White House and Republicans control Congress. Their decision to pull out came an hour, 2 hours after Ted Sarandos, who's the CEO of Netflix, left the White House. And the photos of him leaving, I think, tell you a bit. He looks quite downcast. So he may have been looking for some kind of sign from the White House saying, you can get this deal done. It doesn't look like he got any sort of approval from them. And I think that contributed as well.
Well, that's a very interesting point that you raised there. And I'm going to come back to it in a minute because it suggests that politics does play a part or has played a part in all of this. But before we get to it, we were under the impression that the Warner board preferred the Netflix offer because it was cleaner, was an all-cash offer that didn't require sort of debt financing, and plus it wasn't for the whole business, which meant less regulatory scrutiny.
The Warner Brothers board said all those things. They may have believed those things. Their ultimate responsibility is to their shareholders. It's to extract the highest price. This is a company whose shares were trading around $7 a year ago, and now the Ellisons are offering to pay $31 a share. And so if you're the Warner Brothers board, you essentially want both companies to come back and say, we're willing to pay more, which is what they were doing. So it was unclear, I think, to just about everyone in the media world why Warner's initially preferred the Netflix deal. Paramount kept coming back, offering different terms, changing parts of the financing. Warner Brothers Discovery wouldn't look at the deal. Paramount kept insisting that they had to look at the deal, and eventually Paramount got their way. If you are purely looking at this from a financial perspective, Warner Brothers shareholders have to be delighted with this deal, assuming it goes through.
And let's return to that point you made earlier about politics playing a part in all of this, especially given that you have a president who openly voices criticism and support for certain media companies and who weighs in on media mergers and approvals. I mean, I understand the White House appeared to support Paramount instead of Netflix.
inserts himself into everything, into all kinds of deals. Last summer, he demanded that the CEO of Intel be fired. A few days later, he said, oh, actually, the CEO of Intel is great. And a few weeks after that, the United States government ended up owning 10% of Intel. These are all sort of extraordinary things in American capitalism. We haven't seen stuff like this before. And so we certainly expected him to weigh in on Netflix versus Paramount. Netflix had been courting Donald Trump. He apparently took a liking to Ted Sarandos when Ted Sarandos was visiting him last year. But he also likes the Ellisons. In particular, he likes Larry Ellison, one of the richest men in the world, someone who has supported Donald Trump since the 2016 election. And Larry Ellison and his son David Ellison, who control Paramount, went out of their way to make that a more attractive merger to Donald Trump when they bought that company last year. And they have reportedly told Donald Trump they would do other things that would please him if this deal went through. One big thing Donald Trump seems to be obsessed with is the future of CNN, which is currently controlled by Warner Brothers Discovery. He said that should have new owners, and now it looks like he's going to get his way. So again, the shorter answer is yes, politics are very much involved in this deal. They're involved in any sort of major deal that goes through that involves U.S. regulators right now, because Donald Trump has made it clear that he wants to look and see and weigh in on everything, regardless of whether this is something that his Department of Justice should theoretically look at independently. He's made it clear that the Department of Justice works for him. It's an extension of him. So this is always going to be political one way or the other.
And we are, of course, in the news business ourselves. So let me just ask you about that. I mean, what, if anything, do you think might change with those news providers at places like CNN that you mentioned? Are their staff worried about all this, especially that integrity and the independence of the network might be diminished?
Yes, is the short answer. They are worried about that. They have watched what has happened over at CBS News since the Ellisons bought Paramount last summer. They've installed Barry Weiss, an opinion journalist, formerly of the New York Times, to come in and remake that thing. I think a lot of people are interested in the idea of television news being remade. A lot of people are also dismayed by some of the actions Barry Weiss has taken. If you work at CNN right now, you look over what's been happening at CBS and go, that doesn't sound good to me. Even the best version of those two companies being combined would involve a lot of hair pulling and pain and likely layoffs. You add in someone who hasn't run a TV news operation before as theoretically now going to be in charge of your TV operation as well. That is quite concerning at the very least.
Well, it's a fascinating story, and even more interesting the way that you've told it to us. Thank you very much indeed. Peter Kafka is Business Insider's chief correspondent. He was talking to me on the line there from New York.